Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in London for a crucial summit with European leaders. The meeting comes 2 days after a tense clash with US President Donald Trump at the Oval. The summit, hosted by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, aims to address 3 key issues: meeting Ukraine's immediate needs, working towards a lasting peace deal, and strengthening security guarantees for the country. Ahead of the meeting, Starmer and Zelensky signed a $2.8 billion loan agreement to boost Ukraine's defense, with the first installment expected next week. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, French President Emmanuel Macron, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and NATO Chief Mark Rutte were greeted by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer as they arrived at London's Lancaster House for the crisis talks on Ukraine. The UK Prime Minister says Britain and France will work on a peace deal with Ukraine and present it to President Donald Trump.
Now agreed that the United Kingdom, along with France and possibly 1 or 2 others, will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting, and then we'll discuss that plan with the United States. So in those calls on Friday night, through the meeting yesterday, into the calls again last night, I think we've got a step in the right direction because, as I say, nobody wants to see what happened on Friday, but it's really important that we keep our central focus, which is lasting peace in Ukraine.
The diplomatic push comes as at a delicate moment where the US president accused Volodymyr Zelensky of being ungrateful and risking World War III. This has shaken European nations. The incident threatens to reverse diplomatic gains made just days ago. European leaders have rallied behind Zelensky after Trump's furious exchange with the Ukrainian president. The leaders of Germany, Spain, France, Poland, Canada, and the Netherlands were among those who posted social media messages backing Ukraine, with Zelensky responding directly to each one of them by thanking them for their support. The spat has intensified the pressure on European nations to fill gaps in US military aid and make a decision whether they can go it alone in arming Ukraine. European policymakers are reviewing their weapons stocks to assess how much they could marshal up. There are also calls for Zelensky to repair his relationship with the US and its president. Meanwhile, Russia has praised Trump and scolded Europe for seeking to continue the war in Ukraine. Foreign Ministers Lavrov and others called Trump's aim to end the war in Ukraine pragmatic.
Трамп, он прагматик. Вот это его лозунг «здравый смысл».
Trump, he is a pragmatist. His slogan is common sense, of course means, and everybody already see it, a shift to a different way of doing things. But the goal is still MAGA, Make America Great Again. He has got a new cap now. Everything that Trump promised, he did. You see, this gives politics a lively human character. That is why it is interesting to work with him.
Придает такой живой характер, человеческий характер.
A spokesperson to the Kremlin, Dmitry Peskov, says Trump and Putin's Ukraine policy largely coincides. This was during an interview that was recorded before Trump-Zelensky fallout in Washington. The Kremlin continues to insist that Kiev must accept its terms for peace, which include territorial concessions that Ukraine has repeatedly rejected. Dr. Sergei Sumleny is a defense expert and director, European Resilience Initiative Center. He's now joining us live on this broadcast. Dr. Sumleny, good to see you and thank you very much for making time for us. Do you think that this summit in Europe or in London will have any effects and could change the narrative or the geopolitical narrative going forward?
Oh, thank you for having invited me today. A huge honor, as always, being your guest on your show. Well, the summit at least demonstrates that people understand that the topic is here, that they need to develop new strategies, new defense strategies, security strategies, and security approach. The role of the United States is I would politely say is reducing, but some say disappearing with rapid velocity and with really scaring tempo. So other nations must decide how can we protect ourselves from hostile countries like Russia or in potential China, for example, not talking about like other threats which exist still like Iran, etc. So we have seen that for way too long, the Western world, NATO, relied on the U.S. protection, including U.S. nuclear shield. And despite all the warnings, like Donald Trump has told it during his first presidency, he doesn't want to continue to invest that much American power into protection of Europe. These warnings have not been heard. Now we are facing reality. I hope very much that the statements of the political leaders, this wake-up call is here, we must decide how to protect ourselves, and these statements will transform into acts. Still, it's really hard to understand how, for example, such constructions like the European Union, which have never been a defensive alliance, much more a trade alliance, economical alliance, how they can transform themselves very rapidly into something more realistic on the field of security and defense.
And we're going to declare leave, and then we can start the meeting. In recent days, we've agreed that a group of us will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting.
Well, Dr. Sumleni, sorry for that delay. Now, going forward, you've heard the speeches by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who says that the West and us cannot be divided. If you're talking about that, now that we see that there are like two camps here, there's a camp where there's the US and Russia, and then there's a camp where there's Zelensky and Europe. Who could be the possible pacifier? Who could be the possible peacemaker between the two camps? Very quickly.
Oh, well, for Prime Minister Meloni, it's a hard task to stand for her security ideas to defeating Russia and be in an alliance with all conservative parties like Hungary, also the US with Donald Trump. So she tries to be on both camps. But the problem is we cannot find an agreement with Russia because Russia has many times demonstrated they don't want to have an agreement. They want a capitulation. Trump's so-called peace plan is not a compromise. It's Ukraine capitulation towards Russia. And Russia doesn't want to have only Ukraine. Russia wants to have much more, at least half of Europe. In this constellation, it is hard to find a compromise. That's why it's important to be strong enough to demonstrate Russia, you cannot get what you want. Now we need to talk. And that can be reached only when Europe has enough firepower and enough decisiveness to use it.
Mr. or Dr. Sergei Sumleni, thank you very much for all your insights and for talking to us today.
Thank you so much. A huge pleasure for me. Thank you.